Hi, and welcome to Keep Sane, Cheaper Than Therapy. Today is going to be episode 22, the school year. Some kids have already started back to school. Where I live, don't start until after the holiday in September. So, um, every year and as summers go by and trying to fill your kids of uh, not being bored or not over scheduled is always kind of a fun balance. But it always reminds me of looking at their education and everything else and really wondering why they have this long a time off. I mean, I've taken 2 weeks off work before and come back, and it takes me a while to even remember like what my password to log in is or the flow of my day. I mean, I can't imagine taking, well, I kind of can imagine because I did go to school in the US, um, of having an entire summer off when you're an employee. I mean, it'd be awesome if I guess if you're a teacher, you get kind of the concept, but it's such a hard thing to try to encourage thought and education and not forgetting everything they've just spent the rest of the year to learn. I guess my big pitch is let's talk about a year round. I guess there are a few thousand schools in the US that do year round school. Um, and based on that, I'm not sure if it's elected that way or if it is something that um, is like if you enroll them in summer school sort of thing. The article didn't really say anything about that because I did try to look up and see if there's anything going on, trying to push in that direction. If you look historically, or sorry, recent history of stats of education programs that do better than the United States, which is a lot, um, you'll see that we're pretty short on ranking pretty well. So let's So looking at some of the rankings, um, and this is it's a European publication, um, but it says top 40 education systems in the world. So not specific schools or whatnot, but looks like South Korea shows first, then Japan, Singapore, Hong Kong, Finland, UK, Canada, Netherlands, Ireland, Poland, Denmark, Germany, Russia, then the United States. I'm not sure how true. I mean, it seems like some of those are off. And I didn't look up by like type. Um, Another one says Finland's number one, then Switzerland, then Belgium, Singapore, Netherlands, um, Qatar, Ireland, Estonia, New Zealand, Barbados, Japan. Um, that's on another one that says 11 best school systems in the world. That's from BusinessInsider.com. Referencing a couple things just because it's not opinion. I'm just looking. A lot of these locations do year-round school. Another common thing you find is a lot of these, and this one's probably the hardest one to argue over even year-round school, um, is most of them don't have sports as part of the school. School is school, and then sports are like city league and other things like that, more club based, as it were. So I'm kind of a big I guess I'm getting further and further behind the um, city-wide sports sort of thing. As I talked about before, of being behind like city by city, high school to high school, creating competition and all that and rivalries, which I mean can be healthy. Competition is healthy as well as bad. But for me, I'm looking at education is what school is for, and if we can't afford other things because of cost, I mean, the amount to have each school have football equipment and everything else seems a little bit, oh, excessive in cost and no different than I think the printed book is the same way. Um, it seems like with technology and everything else, we wouldn't have to buy books as often. Um, just pay for licensing and some tablets or Um, just maybe buy modifications. It's where you buy the full book and then just pay for essentially a cliff note of changes and corrections. I mean, I get McGraw-Hill and whomever else prints textbooks likes to get their money, but I would have to think it's cheaper to produce digital and, you know, 20 bucks a book or 10 bucks a book and for the digital copy and then just have to renew the license every year or something like that. Than having to have an entire printing press for books and all the shipping cost. I mean, I would think their profit margin, I would think, would be huge compared to the current process of producing books. Not, I get some places it may not work as well, but why can't we print and check out copies of these? I mean, we have copier budgets. I mean, for kids who don't have iPads or, maybe there's some happy medium of being able to supply, kids the information they need without, I get sending iPads home with kids who tend to break stuff if they're in neighborhoods of high crime, if they have shitty siblings, stuff like that. It's a little hard to be like, here's an iPad, don't lose it or break it, or you'll have no education. Yeah, it's a little bit difficult. Um, Maybe, and I get it's hard to talk about this be national because I don't understand some of the more rural and more, um, I guess I hate using the term urban, but the things you always see on the news about inner city schools and stuff like that. Again, no experience. I'm definitely not going to make any commentary on that. I have no idea. I've watched documentaries like any other middle class white person, I guess, and all the thing I can say is I'm amazed anybody ever successfully complete school based on all the metal detectors and what seems to be hostility and tension. But then again, that also could just be a filmmaker trying to sensationalize kids trying to get education, or just making their own commentary on what they see and editing it together to support their view. I have no idea. I'm not giving any opinion there. I'm just saying, you know, I would hope there would be a way to create when you get rid of the sports and all this other stuff. I would think you could create more satellite education areas. Even if we pay to set up these like in houses or people's, one person applies because they have the room to set up the house with like 10 computers and supply internet. Here and there if there's places that are hard to get to, to have a bus system and everything else. I would think there'd be a way with technology and everything else to create more of an adapted learning system. And again, you take a lot of the school stuff out of it. I'm not saying not to subsidize sports and clubs, but if a kid's really smart, they have to wait for every kid who doesn't get it, and that doesn't make sense to me. It's like, okay, my kid's good at reading, good at math, horrible at art, or good at reading, horrible at math, good at math, horrible at reading. It's like, why do we have to have them do this snail pace? Even if you have different little sub courses, I mean, someone's waiting. Someone's always waiting. Whether it's year to year, page to page, I mean, and someone's struggling to keep up. I mean, that's the other part of it is we always want to, like was the military saying of we're only as fast as our slowest person. Um, education's kind of the same way. We want to, a lot of kids of learning disability, physical disability, language barriers want to be what they call mainstreamed into the core education. And, while I don't disagree with anybody's right to have an education, um, I disagree with handicapping kids to having a quality education. And our public school systems have a hard time producing quality education. Um, you know, some kids get, if you're lucky enough to be born in the right place with the right, school system and everything else, you can, have, a good education, good teachers, good chance at Ivy League schools or wherever you're wanting to go. If you go to other schools, you have better chance to make it sports wise. If you want to play football, if you live somewhere like Florida, California, Texas, um, Ohio, um, places where they do a lot of recruiting, Seattle, Washington, places bigger populations because you have, obviously bigger population, you have more athletes, and out of more athletes, you're going to have more quality athletes. Um, Being in Oregon, we don't produce a lot of Division 1 high profile kids. And that's fine. It kind of sucks for the kids that are passionate about football, but I mean, again, that's where, to me, pull it out of the high schools. If you can't, you know, if you can't produce one nationally competitive team out of a city, because you have four, ish high schools, why not have three teams out of the area that aren't tied to the high school and they can be more competitive? You give those good kids, you know, more chance to be seen nationally. Go Division 1. You're For kids who still want to, risk CTE and all that stuff, playing football, bashing heads. Uh, they would have a better shot going Division 1. You're improving their odds at their future at what they're passionate about, um, and you're you can still have other teams. You can create more small teams, and I feel you'll build better community. Because those guys, the parents, guys, not football players, but like the community has to back because it's not based on you living across town. Um, oh well, this team's better, or kids are transferring into this school district, and that's just horse crap, and all this other stuff, and all this hostility between programs. It's like, well, everybody transfers into your school, that's why they're so good at football, or you know, oh, your guys are on steroids. Well, it's not the school I'm talking. I mean, I'm just saying the banter that goes back and forth. I mean, I still hate my old high school rival for no reason. No reason. Don't know a single one of them. I had no personal grudges against anybody. They were just the rival. You hated them for the sheer title on this school, which is just stupid. They were one bridge away. Um, you know, I bet you some really good golfers could hit across that river. I don't remember the distance, but I don't even think it was a full golf, tee shot away. My high school to high school, yeah, a little further, but city to city, nope. And they were different cities, um, but not far in distance. Portland suburbs, there's a lot of schools that aren't that far apart. Kind of the nice thing of living in Portland suburbs versus, in other areas is you have enough population. It may still take 45 minutes, but you're really only going like 10 miles or 15 miles. Whereas, if you get to the more rural areas, you could be driving hours just to get to to compete in parts of your league. And that's another thing. It's pretty hard for parents. I mean, to keep up with their kids and schooling, and I like competition, and I think it's good for them, and I want them to be able to play. I really do. But have an A team in smaller areas, and then everywhere else, just a bunch of you know B teams, balanced out B teams, so that way they can all compete, and the A teams are meant to travel. I mean, again, these are just thoughts I have because I my son at one time before he decided to quit football wasn't awesome, but he had the potential, size-wise, to be looked at for scholarships. And I wouldn't say anything big Division 1. I mean, he wasn't that big, but he had potential to have eyes looked at for Division 1 scholarship. You know, maybe Oregon State because they're not awesome enough to have a ton of people wanting to go there within state, but they're still a Division 1 school. You're going to be on TV. You don't have to be awesome. They produce NFL players. Again, that's all you know. Most kids don't make it, but you still, if your kid loves it that much, you have to at least consider giving them the opportunity to make it to Division 1, and then Division 1 helps them get to the next level if they put in the effort, don't get hurt, pick the right position, stuff like that. Um, and I've gotten way off just mainly using football, but like wrestling, I mean, I love wrestling. It's a great sport, again, especially one-on-one sports. I very much believe in competition. and character building that one-on-one offers. I mean, team has its own set of skills. Then, it's just social development that's important. But for accountability, I like wrestling and one-on-one sports, tennis, stuff like that better. Um, but like the wrestling in the state of Oregon, there's a few really good schools, and then most of the rest suck. I mean, barely have enough kids to even field all the weight classes, and you see that, and you're like, okay, well, why can't the other teams come together and build one like multi-team? And I believe occasionally a couple high schools have come together to be able to sport a team, and that when you have to do that, I mean, you're paying more money and all that to have a very less competitive. And when you suck like that, it gets fun, not fun quick. I mean, losing is not fun. Not having good enough coaches and a good enough competition level to even get decent sucks. I mean, so you have a lot of one and dones, two and dones with competition. Kids who try it out and like may like it but hate losing. They're not getting better, so they just quit after a year or two, if they even last that long. And so I'm a big, um, I guess, advocate for taking sports out of schools. Academic clubs, I think you could probably keep them in schools. It doesn't seem like it would cost that much. Um, but I also don't really think our school system, the way it is really set up to really push kids and allow kids to go through the system quicker. Um, and I get you're building on the masses, but a lot of tax money goes into schools, so I don't think you can always use well, we have to build it for universal, for everybody. And it's like, yeah, but you can build it to where it's kind of modular and they can kind of push through without having to be in an AP class. I mean, there's no way to advance them beyond and like evaluate, have it go from A to B. Like math teachers tend to, I mean, I've had math teachers that did algebra, advanced algebra, calculus, and other ones did, you know, stat, my mind went blank, but geometry and statistics. There we go. Stuff like that. And, so there's no way to create a progression so they can go beyond to the next level using like the same book. I mean, I get you have to limit the amount a teacher does for homework and but testing through stuff, if they, I mean, I've mentioned Khan Academy before, but if they spend an entire summer going through Khan Academy, but because the end of last year they finished at this level, they're stuck, or they get to halfway through, they've been working their butt off with extra, they can't jump to Algebra 2 if, because I mean, even private schools that I know of don't really allow it. So it's not just public versus private, even. To me, it's don't we have a system that would allow for advancement based on your actual aptitudes. Like if they get it, if they get the core concept, like and maybe it's the way we test, like allow them to progress to the next thing. I mean, honestly, I feel like most teachers are dealing with daycare and parents, as far as rather than teaching, and it's not. And I'm not saying that's the teacher's fault. It might be the system's fault or the kid's fault or having enough kids you don't give a crap or hate having to be there. Um, also our school system doesn't teach any life skills. You know, they know most don't have shop or teach personal finance and all these like what most kids don't graduate high school knowing what a credit score is. I mean, there's a lot of places where they're lucky they can frickin' read. Um, because it's just a turning it through, get next, next, next. Um, and I have some family members that are teachers, and it's a huge discrepancy even by them giving accounts of students of who's learning and who's not. Um, some parents, I mean, she's had flat out, I mean, as a teacher, not been able to do anything about kids that are full on being taught being racist. And it's, do Black History Month, write a paper on, an important African American and like refuses to. And parents use some horrible language and say no. And it's a public school system. You can give them an incomplete, but you're not correcting that. So, I mean, again, that's only one thing I've heard. I'm sure it's far from unique, but kids that have bad handwriting, kids who have bad attitudes and violent, and you know, so there's so many things, and yeah, you can't keep growing class sizes, but you have to financially do it. So I just, teachers go through all this school to get paid so little, and so no authority really, no, you know, no real support from parents. I know I've gotten pissy with teachers before, not to them directly, because I never know if it's fully accurate of my kid being upset because of the teacher or not. But, you still hear about bullying. You hear about the loudmouth kid jawing off who teacher won't correct him. But if that kid who's getting picked on punches him, that kid's getting in trouble that threw the punch. Physical violence is, to me, way shorter lived than emotional. Everything I remember from a kid, pain wise, wasn't from any of the fights I got into. It was from things kids said. It was just like, no different than, when you start dating when you get older. It's always the unfinished things that, like the surprise breakup or whatever, that the lack of closure and understanding that always kind of eat at you, or at least me, who freaking knows about everything else. But all these things with you know schoolwork and sports and academics and emotional well-being, and you know a year-round school system gives you more flexibility there. I think it allows you to be more modular. I mean, you could do, you know, brick it by 30 days or 45 days, or not 660 is too many to me, but like, 45 days, then 2 weeks off. So month and a half, 2 weeks, month and a half, 2 weeks, month and a half, 2 weeks. Um, or maybe they go year round, but it's Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, shorter days. Um, or Monday through Friday, but Monday, Wednesday, Friday, it's different. I mean, there's a ton of stuff, and I don't have a good answer. Every day, if you shorten the day, seems like a bigger pain. Cutting a day off seems to be better. A lot of kids miss days anyway, like no Mondays, um, which would add childcare issues. But then again, you're adding one day, you're not adding an entire summer of childcare. So some parents get some benefit as well. And you have 2 weeks. If you had 2 weeks every six, I mean, their teachers still can do vacation. Some of them couldn't do side jobs, but um, I don't. I just feel like there's a better way to scale it. I think it takes a lot of parent and taxpayer support. I think it takes administrator support and really working with vendors and finding a better way to teach. Um, that is a more adaptive, but again, I think part of it is taking sports and some of that extra distraction out of schools. um, Shortening the day might help kids. I mean, there's teenagers need more sleep. You can't have a teenager doing sports and all this other stuff and still having the actual amount of time to do homework and get sleep. They emotional support needs sleep. I really think that we have to kind of rein in what we expect our kids to handle. I work a lot outside of my normal job. I do extra side projects and businesses and stuff like that. But that's me. I mean, I only have to deal with the financial stress if I don't get stuff done. I don't actually have deadlines like kids do with homework, and, having to go run for 2 hours and run around, and then bus trips, who knows how long to get to a place, and on a Tuesday not getting back till 10 p.m. or 10:30, and I'm not joking there. And then still need to get homework done for Wednesday's class, and it's like that's a lot to ask a kid. Um, Especially to retain it and do well in testing. I mean, that's I wouldn't ask that of most adults. I mean, I know adults that freak out over working an extra couple hours overtime and actually getting to the store, or cleaning the house, or apartment, or whatever, you have going on. It's like to get your chores and your tasks and having a social life, if you have one, plus work. I mean, I know people that couldn't handle a kid's life. And I mean, I look back and I used to think, well, great, if I didn't have the stress of,
money, it would be awesome. I just focus on education. Well, I sometimes forget they don't get to focus on what they want to learn. And not every kid knows, so it's fair that way a little bit, but we're asking them to do all this learning and to retain it, and we don't even know how, we have yet to prove that kids really retain much. Same as adults. They retain a lot more when they're younger, but we mainly have them finger painting. It's like if it's that hard to teach that much information, can't we like whittle down the excess? Um, no offense, history and some of these other subjects, but you know, freaking have Google teach the lesson, not. Well, we don't need to give them a laundry list of fact checking to do. Um, what the list of presidents? Yeah, you can sound smart if you're ever on Jeopardy. It might be useful, but guess what? You're going to study again anyway. I couldn't list the presidents. I don't consider myself dumb. I may be ignorant in a lot of ways, but I'm definitely not a dumb guy. I mean, I can do a lot of different things, especially related to a computer, but not not remembering the order of the presidents isn't one of them. I'll go to Google and I can see every single one of those guys. May not get good stories on them. I mean, you hear people today talk about founding fathers, and you would think they were, you know, saints. No blood on their hands, no slaves in the back barn, um, or any of that stuff. But guess what? You can try to rinse history, but people don't forget that are that get screwed over. Native Americans are still pretty pissed, and I know a lot of African Americans are still pretty pissed. So, I mean, obviously we weren't nice about the way our forefathers handled the taking of the country and the spreading of white people across the land. I mean, that's yeah. So history is important, but you got to teach the actual history. Give them scale it up as they need it. Um, don't try to wash it down and everything else. It doesn't help anybody. It just lets kids know they get lied to by everybody their entire life. And some teachers get in trouble for trying to fill in the blanks because they consider it editorializing or trying to put their view. No different than political. I know more kids that I've talked to more kids during the last election that were upset that didn't follow any of the debates, don't really know who either the candidates were. They just know their teacher was upset, so they were upset and pretty much gave them a lot of information. And by no means did I like either candidate. It'd be easy for either to come back with complaints if they asked their teacher. But I'm sorry, I mean I don't think like politics and religion. I don't think any of that should be. If you go to a private school, go for it. But if you go to a public school, ah, no, I don't think so. Why don't you focus on what they need to and the building blocks towards life? Don't fill them full of opinion. Um, you can disagree with me on religion, and most people do. You can disagree with me on politics, and most people do. Um, but it's still my kid. Don't put your thoughts and make them feel bad, or don't grade them down because they don't have your viewpoint. One of my big complaints with like English is, reading books. I've heard a ton of adults talk about, I reread this book, and every time I read it, I get something a little different out of it, or it speaks to me differently. Sometimes they're talking about the Bible, sometimes they're talking about, you know, what Sense and Sensibility or Wuthering Heights or all these, different books. I've read some over the years. I don't read a whole lot, so um, you know, I don't think there's one interpretation. Um, I love was it Back to School, Rodney Dangerfield, you know, classic comic, awesome. Uh, that movie, Kurt Vonnegut comes in, writes a paper for him, he turns it in, and his teacher grades him down for not understanding the book, and the report was written by the author, really shady thing to do to pay an author to write his own book report, but essentially, teachers saying you didn't get that. Well, I mean, I get them not comprehending it or like the symbolism behind some stuff, but unless they learned it from the author or learned read what the author was trying to say and what they felt about the book, it's someone else's interpretation that they either have themselves or they've adapted to their needs. So it's really hard for like I really don't like schools editorializing and padding stuff. It's just one of those things that I think we can save a lot of wasted energy um, for the school day by really bullet pointing, teaching kids how to think. I mean, again, we are in the technological age, teaching kids to think, how to resource stuff. I mean, I know people that work in call centers. They don't know everything that you're calling them about, which, yes, is frustrating if you're calling tech support and they're looking up the same article you looked up already before you called them. But they are taught to research and ask questions, how to gather information, how to process information. They aren't asked to, like, if you work Microsoft call center, they don't teach them to memorize every piece of software and trouble with, cross communication with every different operating system. Like if you have Microsoft Word 2000 and you're trying to put it on a Windows 10 machine and it just doesn't want to, they're not going to memorize all that stuff. They're going to know how to look up what operating system you have with what piece of software and what sort of trouble you're having, and they're going to go on their intranet and they're going to look up all their knowledge base stuff and try to figure out how to help you. Well, that's what kids need to do. That's how you learn new skills. It's no different. I've learned a few different programming languages and stuff over the years, and um, as the internet changes, what you have to do and how it has to happen, and what the expectations are of interactivity and speed, and all these things are adaptive. They're constantly, you have different versions of the language. New versions come out that get rid of old features or old coding lines or old, shortcut statements, and all these different things. You have to learn what goes away because sometime all of a sudden your web page or your app won't work. And it's important that you keep up. Well, if you have a million things, you're not going to remember. So I have 6 subjects a day. I'm not going to remember every detail that every teacher said. I'm going to make mistakes. Um, and I really think that grades aren't a good measure for kids' ability to think. It means how well do they know how to be a student, not how well do they know how to be an effective part of society. And that's my big thing. We need to teach kids how to be adults. I mean, we you can go get killed for your country at 18, but nope, you can't buy beer. It's the standard joke of, well, you're going to get shot at and you're responsible for taxes and you're now an adult and have to deal with every consequence that has to be with an adult. Can't buy beer. I think there's some other stuff. I don't know if they moved the tobacco age back. I think marijuana is the same for the states that are legal, even though it's federally illegal. The nice thing, even state to state and country, in the country, it's confusing. Yep, state says it's legal, country says it's not, so you can still go to jail for it. Confusing shit. And we're adults. I've got almost 40 years on this in the U.S. and I mean, the contradictions just astound me still. I mean, hypocrisies and, all the lying and backhanded stuff. It's like, really? We still can't just talk. We can't figure out what moves the machine forward. I mean, and education is where we establish our future leaders. You know, we allow kids to turn in stuff that looks like a text message. Are you fucking kidding me? LOL. No, fuck you. Type in laugh out loud. Learn a keyboard and get up to 80 words a minute so you can punch out some papers. Because if you're hunting and pecking, you're kind of fucked for life if you require technology. I mean, I know old guys that you watch and they're just sitting there, looking for letters, and it's like they don't know the keyboard. They're always looking at it, like, where'd that one go? Doesn't change. It's in the same fucking order it was yesterday when you were staring at it for 20 minutes trying to type 2 sentences. Half the time I take the keyboard, type it out real quick for them, and like, here you go. Drives me bonkers. How I don't know how they have their job if it requires a keyboard. Um, teach kids typing. Teach kids how to think. Apps change, operating systems change, technology changes. The need to think doesn't. Common sense, I swear, is a superpower anymore. I have a few friends, and every now and then I'll ask, like, something, I'll walk into a situation, don't work there, no idea how to do the job, And you'll see, I'll have a friend and explaining what's going on. I'll be like, well, why don't you just do this? And they'll be like, yeah, exactly. It's simple, huh? And I'm, and you like, have they not thought about it? They're like, no, they have no idea. They're just arguing who has to do it, and no one knows even how to do it. But they're arguing about who has to figure it out. It's like, it's common sense. I mean, if you have, let's say, a spreadsheet and you want a column gone, well, if no one knows how to delete a column, figure it out. Um, there's ways to do it hardly, and there's also the hard way and the easy way to do a lot of stuff. So, I mean, common sense of, well, if they're losing paperwork, let's figure out why they're losing paperwork and get rid of that process. Or, I can't read their handwriting. Well, make them type it. And that was actually something very similar to what I was referring to. Well, we can't read their handwriting. That's why things keep getting inputted wrong. Don't let them submit it handwritten. Make them type it. You know, phones have apps and keyboards. You don't have to have them handwrite it. Simple. That seems simple to me. Um, these are the results of not teaching people to think. I ask people to do basic stuff all the time in the tech world, and they're like, I don't know how to do that. Yeah, I just look at it. It's pretty much obvious. How do you turn it on? Well, there's always an on button. I'm sure someone will debate that, but I mean, every computer I've ever seen has an on button. It's blank. Is it plugged in? You know, Standard tech things. And yes, I'm pretty retentive on, step by step process and everything else. And that's just because so often if you don't look at the most basic thing, you waste all your time. You're like, ah, crap, it got kicked out of the plug. Yeah, that's why it's not getting power. Teaching kids to think about that. I know I've kind of took a little bit of loop and been yammering a ton here, but I mean, education's a big thing to me. It's like, why? And I'll probably do more of these, just reiterating smaller points. But why can't we teach kids to think instead of learn facts? It doesn't apply anymore. I mean, our school system's designed for people working in fields, man. College, first 2 years of college are the same as high school. No new shit, just same as high school. I mean, if we're that bad at teaching in high school and we need to do it in college, why don't we just start college earlier? Get rid of those years in high school. Oh, wait, they're not old enough to make decisions outside of the home. I mean, I really think the process through, guys. I have no problems moving adulthood back to 21, but that's going to piss off a lot of kids who have shitty parents that need them out of the house and need to tell them to go get their own job, and parents and kids who can't get along. But, you know, it's just use your brain. I don't think an 18-year-old's an adult, but I think that's our fault as the older generations. I think we've coddled them with participation trophies and positive reinforcement so much they get to the real world and they freak out, or they get to college, they can't have a job, or they can't struggle, do both. And college is so fucking expensive nowadays. They end up with a 20-year debt that, on a college degree that they can't find a job making 30,000 a year. I mean, where our education system from top to bottom is broken. It doesn't work. The success stories are the anomaly. And it's probably because either the kid's so freaking motivated, he's hell or high water, he or she's getting out of where she lives, gonna be successful, or the parents are so driven that the kid's just yep, 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 and becomes a yes man. And that's, I mean, and not every kid who's got parents who essentially whip them like a dog educationally is a yes man. Sometimes they totally rebel when they get away from home. I mean, most of the freaky people I met right after high school were like um, had very strict parents, whether it's religious or just over micromanaging. I get guilty of that a little bit here and there myself. I try not to do it. I've definitely stopped lately. I just try to teach them why they should care, and if they have any requests, I'm happy to help and I'm here for them. It took me a while to kind of learn you can't make them do stuff. I mean, you can, but you can't. Like I can make him do homework and sit there in front of a book for an hour. I can check his homework if I understand it all, because I don't remember everything from high school. It's useless shit for the most part. Um, I have my own stuff I'm still learning and working on and all that stuff. But you can't make them retain it. You can't make it useful. And most of the stuff they have to do, I don't find useful. You have to get so many electives. Well, electives are literally just like, and I agree with, kids trying to figure out what they like, but I, you know, I just think a lot of this stuff could be in college. Let them survey science. Like, yeah, survey science in high school, see if you like it, but have it be a pass fail. Let kids find the passion for learning. GPAs and, SATs might be a good indicator. I just think everybody in different areas has to agree. I think the GPA thing's kind of a horseshit thing. There's a lot of subjectiveness based on teachers. I've known some dumb fucks who can get straight A's and, some really intelligent people who can barely hold a, B average, or people who try really hard who just fuck up on tests, but they work hard and oh geez, it's going to affect college, and it actually will affect college if they can't get those A's that they need to get the right into the right school. But this isn't class; they aren't going to be taking that class in college, or they get better options. Maybe they'll be more interested. They get a structure their schedule that they like more. And this is again, I think all we're doing is handicapping our kids. We're giving them structures that don't really work and a system that doesn't really work, and we're asking them to produce something positive out of something that wasn't positive for them. I hated high school. A lot of, cliquish shit and, you know, a lot of angry teachers. I mean, and I went to a decent school, rated really well. Um, but, they were either arrogant or they didn't like you or, a lot of different things. I had a few really great teachers. I'm not going to lie. I had some teachers that honestly, I, I had a few I hated the subject and I loved the class. I mean, one was a science teacher, I had an English teacher and a history teacher. I liked my band instructor. Yes, I was a band. And no, but these teachers make you want to go. You try, whether it makes sense or not, you're going to go work your ass off. And other teachers, I used to love math. Still love math, but I hated it for a while I was in school. I had two teachers back to back who I just could not get along with and just hated them. They hated me for some reason, but no matter what I did, it wasn't their way, so they didn't like it. Passed all the tests, and everything else. They didn't like my approach to being a student. Mainly, they didn't like me doing homework in class. I don't know why. It took them forever to get through a subject. Get it on day one, and it's just repeat, repeat, repeat. So maybe a few new wrinkles, but nothing special. And it's in the fucking book, and I can read. I was the sort of kid when I was in elementary school, I would do my older brother's stuff, because I found math so interesting. I really wish stuff like Khan Academy and online existed then. I would have probably finished high school math by the end of elementary school. I just loved reading about it and doing it until I had my sophomore and junior year. Then I didn't even take senior math. Um, didn't even go to trig or calculus. I just said, fuck it. Um, because I got so tired of dealing with the teachers and I was going to have to take it again with one of them. And I was like, nope, I'm not doing it. Well, that was originally, but then other things happened, which I wasn't at a place to where I would take math anyway. But not jail or anything. I had to move around, so I didn't go to the same school. I actually got a general diploma, just because I didn't want to change high school, so I just got it from the state. Um, But that's another thing. Discrepancies between schools. I pretty much, as a junior, had all the state requirements filled out. I just couldn't get it from the high school I went to because of the way credits transferred. So I pretty much like, okay, and the state just like, oh yeah, you've got everything. Here you go. I was done with high school, not 4 years in. So that's another thing that doesn't make sense. The requirements from school to school versus what the state wants or what the Fed wants, they aren't the same. I mean, Fed has its requirements for the schools to get funding, um, but each high school has its own graduation requirements. Some require community service, some don't. Some require a certain amount of electives and other core things. I mean, they do have to meet guidelines, but they're not the same. I mean, that doesn't make sense. You switch schools, your requirements can change. I know the minimals don't, because again, they're regulated beyond that school. But I mean, the level. I moved from at the end of elementary school. I moved, going into a new school system before going to middle school in that new system, and I went from being a grade ahead to half a year behind. So 1.5 year swing in quality of education. And that was going from a, a nice school, but just not academically strong, to a much more academically strong school district, like 20 minutes away. Well, maybe it was more like 45 or an hour, but it wasn't that far mileage wise. Yes, during rush hour, but not during like, midnight. And it was eye opening. I went from, oh, this is boring to, when schooled out, to crap, I got to start reading because I'm not to where these kids are. And it took me not that long, but I mean, it took me, I think, the rest of the school year to get right to the level because I moved halfway through fifth grade. But it's still, that's jarring going from that big a difference. So I can't imagine what some of the schools, like the discrepancies between schools within like rural and, you know, from town, like even within town, there's big discrepancies, let alone rural. I can't imagine, um, low income areas, inner city schools having like have the ability to have a quality education at each place across the board seems daunting and impossible. But I would have to think if we don't have a one size fits all or one structure, one it has to be a building, it has to have this sort of stuff, and if we had a way to test ability and thinking, I mean, yeah, you got to teach some facts, you got to teach some other stuff, but whittle it down. Teach thought, ability to comprehend, ability to reason, communicate, positive communication. If we really change the way we structure it, I mean, to me, we'll actually create kids that you want in society that can speak with adults, um, and have a real conversation. People that want to go to college, want to go get a master's degree, who want to, do positive things with community service and in business and be teachers and I mean no different than wanting to revamp year-round school and have improved teachers' pay and give them the respect they deserve and the environments they deserve to teach in. I think students need environments they can learn in and produce something more than a kid who just is so happy the school year's done. I mean, my kids are only happy school starting back up because they get to see friends that they weren't able to get together with over the summer or get to see them more often. Neither are thrilled about going back to class. And that's sad because I try to instill the love of education, but you can't teach passion for education. You have to hope you find things they like and that they'll keep going, and that's hard to do when there's video games and TV. So anyway, I've yammered for a really long time. I hope you gathered something out of this other than me jumping around too much. So have a great day.